Hey everyone, it's Jared. I'm going to show you my round 7 game from the Doeberl Cup 2017 major section. So this was the last round. I had the black pieces against Sarwat Rewais. His rating is 1887. My rating at the time was 1742. So I was doing really well in this tournament. I can't remember exactly what points I was on. I think it was something like 3.5 out of 6, possibly 4 out of 6. I can't quite remember. So I'd be really happy with a win in this game. So for my opening prep, I noticed that he likes to play this move c4, and I found one game of his from about 5 years ago where he was playing an IM. He had white, the IM had black, and the game went like this: e5, g3, knight c6, bishop g2, and the international master played the move f5, which is also the move that I played. I chose to play this because I noticed that my opponent lost that game fairly convincingly and without much of a fight. So I thought, all right, maybe I'll have a psychological edge, because he might be thinking back to how he lost this game, and that might sort of bode well for me. So I chose to play the move f5. So white's idea in this opening with c4, bishop g2, is to put lots of pieces on d5. White will also play knight c3, and we'll have a lot of pieces on the point on d5. I'm really not drawing well right now. Okay, knight c3, there we go. So it makes it very difficult for black to get in d5. This is one of the ideas. So in this position though, my opponent played the move d3. That's also fine. Probably the main line would go knight c3, and black would most often play knight c6, and black will probably try to play moves like bishop c5 or maybe bishop b4, d6, castles, and the game is, reasonably balanced. I'm not quite sure who I'd rather be. Maybe black. Black always needs to be a bit careful since he's played the move f5, because now there might be some issues down there to his king. But this is certainly perfectly fine for the black side to play. Instead, he played d3. There's absolutely nothing wrong with d3. I played knight f6, but his next move was definitely wrong. He played e4. Much better was knight c3. Black would probably play a move like bishop to b4, and then the next moves for black would be d6, castles, and if white plays a3, we can just take, and then we can keep on playing, and maybe some bishop to e6 move or something. But e4, I think, is a pretty bad move. The first reason, I think it's reasonably obvious why it's bad. It just blocks in this piece for one reason, and it weakens d4, like really a lot. And also, it just weakens this whole long diagonal down towards the white king. So I simply took on e4. That's probably another reason why I think e4 is bad, is because it opens up the f-file. Once I put the bishop on c5 and I put the rook on f8, white's going to have some issues on f2. So he took with the pawn. I think this is correct. If he takes with the bishop, then I have a really easy game. I just take. And now, after moves like bishop c5, pawn to d6, and then castles, white's going to have issues on f2. So I think this is just not playable for white. Also, white's got no pieces developed and has just made his position weaker with these pawn moves. So after the move e4, I simply took on e4 and played bishop c5, hoping to land on f2 at some point, possibly knight g4. Of course I can't play it right now because the queen's on it. But after his next move, knight e2, well, now I can play knight g4, and the pawn on f2 is looking very tender. He didn't have to play knight e2. I remember during the game not really seeing a good move for white. There were issues with playing knight to f3. Of course, the main one is that the e4 pawn is now hanging. The engine wants to play the move knight c3. Castles. Knight f3, d6, castles. And this is certainly better for black. But white is certainly not losing here. White was just losing after knight e2 though. Black in this position actually has a couple of decent moves. He can, if he wants, just play the move bishop e6 or bishop g4 and be fine. But black's also got a really nice variation which most likely would not have happened because I wouldn't have seen this line because it's just so weird and wacky. But knight g4 is actually a really good move here. After h3, black doesn't need to move the knight but can play knight d4. And after white takes this piece, black's going to get the piece back. Or white's going to be forced to take on d4 and let black take the queen. And this is just a sample variation. And very weird position, but black seems to be better here. But after the move knight e2, I played knight g4. As mentioned, just attacking the pawn on f2. White had seen knight g4, thought he had an answer to it, he played f3. It's important that if white castles, black should not castle here. This is actually a very sort of easy move to miss. It looks like I'm just attacking the pawn with all pieces, because I am, but white has a very good move, queen d5 check, and I actually lose a piece. So very important not to let that one happen. In fact, if white had castled, I believe I was intending on playing rook f8 in this position, just to attack. And even I can move the queen to f6 and just keep on piling on pressure on this pawn on f2. Instead, my opponent played the move f3, tempting me to play knight f2, which I did. And he played queen d5, and this was his point. He wants to attack my bishop with the hopes of me moving it, and then he can move his rook and be okay. That was his idea. The problem for white is I don't have to move my bishop. I played the move knight e7, simply attacking his queen. And he made his next move without thinking. He played queen takes c5, and after knight d3 check, he chose to resign. Instead, I should go back and mention that knight to e7, the move that I played, is also, it's a good move, but engines like the move d6 even better. Now, why? Why is d6 better than knight e7? I thought knight e7 looks great. I attack the queen and I attack the rook. I just basically win material. Well, the issue is white can't even save the rook, because the move knight b4 is very, very annoying. For example, the engine likes to play the move pawn to a3, so knight b4 is not possible. And then, of course, we can just take the rook in the corner. If white chooses to save the rook with rook f1, knight b4, and white can basically resign. The only move is to go to d2 with the queen, and then knight d3 check. White's going to have to give up the queen anyway. Of course, this did not happen in the game. After queen c5, I just played the mentioned fork, and then my opponent resigned. So I hope you enjoyed this game. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.